Welcome to Crime Most French, a fortnightly podcast covering intriguing cases carried out on French soil. Researched and narrated by Cedric and rudely interrupted by me, Melanie. We're the true crime podcast All Alliance. Crack open le vin and let the mayhem commence.
Today's episode is episode 49, the Pantin Massacre. In September 1869, 6 bodies are found in a field in Pantin, now a suburb of Paris.
6 bodies.
6 bodies.
Wow.
A whole family has been murdered and buried in shallow graves.
Ugh. This sounds like it's going to be really cheery to talk about.
Yeah, it will be. The resolution of the affair will link several regions of France, possible counterfeiting operations, and a greedy murderer. On the 20th of September 1869, Jean-Louis Auguste Langlois goes to one of his fields in Pantin. He's a farmer. Pantin is on the other side from the peripheric in Paris, so it touches Paris. So now it's all built up. There's no fields. It hasn't been filled for a long time.
So it's going to be one of those areas, like a bit like Belleville Rendezvous, where they were in the country and the city kind of like engulfs them, and they suddenly become just a suburb rather than being rural.
Yes. When he arrives, he discovers strange marks on the ground in a neighboring field, and that field had been recently ploughed. The traces look like blood trails, with bits of brain here and there. He follows them, and they lead him to a corner of the field where he finds a trench, about 3 meters long by 40 centimeters wide, with a heap of soil on top to hide the fact that it had been dug after the field had been ploughed.
So the ploughs basically unearthed all of this, these graves.
Yeah, the trench is on the edge of the field, which had been ploughed, but to make it look like it's part of the ploughing, which probably it was originally, the guy made all the lines and stuff in the soil.
Ah, right,
except not well enough to really hide it when you know you're looking for something following a trail. But if you just walked past, you wouldn't have noticed. That's what he did. So he didn't want the bodies to be found too fast.
Yeah, it seems to be that farmers unearth an awful lot of bodies as well. They definitely kind of like slot in with the dog walkers of.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's easy to bury something in a freshly ploughed field.
Yes.
Easy to dig.
Farmers tend to dig up bones rather than.
Yeah,
unlike
it tends
in this
to be
case.
old stuff.
Yeah.
Yes. Curious and worried, he starts digging in the center of the trench. He first finds a blood-stained handkerchief, and that looks very fresh. Then a child's arm.
To me, I would have stopped digging at the. I would have been straight running in the opposite direction as soon as I found the handkerchief.
Well, yeah. After he finds the child's arm,
right,
he digs with his hands, because he had a shovel at that point, and he uncovers the bloody head of the child. That is when he stops. At that point, he said, "Nah, too far."
So the arm wasn't over his line, but the head was.
Apparently, the arm was okay. He was still curious after the arm.
Wow.
But when he got to the head, he thought, don't really want to be part of this.
You have to think the 18th century farmers were made of stern stuff.
Yeah, probably. Well, they were probably used to kill their own animals and stuff.
Oh,
so,
yes.
an arm,
yeah.
But a head. I assume maybe he thought that it's possible to lose an arm, but it's not reasonable to lose a head.
Yeah, that is true, I guess. But
so he stops and runs to town to alert the police. There's a commissioner and an AME, or the equivalent of an AME, that are sent immediately to investigate. In the next few hours, the police uncover 6 bodies, a 2-year-old girl, 4 young boys who were 8, 10, 13, and 16, and a woman who's assumed to be their mum.
Oh, that's horrible.
According to newspapers, the bodies were still warm, which I find very hard to believe.
No, that's not physically possible.
They would lose heat very fast in the ground, I would assume. So
not unless they were being buried in Guadeloupe and the ground was warm. But no, there's just no way you would.
It was the newspapers trying to print papers essentially, so they were making the case more gruesome and and bloody and everything.
They were sensationalizing it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's my guess.
Yeah, because there's just, I mean, even with little bodies, and which as I say, once again darkens my soul talking about, that just logistically burying 6 bodies, even if you just shot them there and then on the spot, by the time you got to the 6th one, the body's going to be cold.
Yeah, but probably all getting there. Yeah, and they were probably there for a little while, for a day or two, so they can't have been warm. But
no,
that's what
I mean, I don't think
say.
there was probably much in the way of insect activity around about the body, bodies possibly, but warm, no.
The tabloid spirit probably was there already at the time.
Oh yes.
So the woman had been stabbed at the base of the skull with a long knife. Then the murderer had stabbed her about 30 times.
That's
an angry murderer.
Oh yeah.
The 2 younger kids were killed the same way, so a knife at the base of the skull, but without the additional stabbing.
Just killing children is just the possibly the worst thing you can do, and stabbing them 40 times would just be...
That would be too much.
Oh, yes.
The other 3 kids were killed with a heavy object hitting them on the head. Only one of the kids had additional traces of strangulation.
So that was bludgeoned and strangled.
And one was strangled as well, yes. The police eventually finds the knife, broken, a shovel, and ropes buried nearby.
I wonder if the only reason the kids' bodies weren't stabbed was because the knife was broken.
It's possible, yeah. It's possible. Although they had been killed with the knife at the base of the skull, so it wasn't broken yet at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Why would he then stab them again? I don't know. It wouldn't make sense to do it that way. It makes sense if you have one person, you can kill them and stab them, but then when you have a whole bunch of kids to do, you can't really kill one, spend some time stabbing, because stabbing 30 times takes like a good minute or two, then move to the next kid who patiently waited and then kill that one. So it doesn't work. You can't really do that. You don't have time.
No, you can go and stab them post-mortem.
Yes.
But still.
But what would be the point?
No.
So it doesn't take long for the police to find the cab, horses, that took the family with a stranger from the Gare du Nord, so the northern train station in Paris. Although Gare de l'Est is like next door, so it doesn't really make sense. But anyway, it works for Gare du Nord, to the location of the murders. The discovery makes a lot of noise. First of all, it was common at the time for people to visit the morgue, apparently, to watch dead bodies, and then visit the scene of the crime, the Sunday outing with the kids. So a lot of people do that.
I have to say I'm quite glad that, we have streaming services and cinemas and theatres, that we don't have to resort to visiting morgues for entertainment. That's kind of... That chills the blood as much as the bodies that are actually in the morgue.
Yes. And of course it gets in the way of the investigation, because people go into the field and they walk everywhere and dig everywhere, and so
no crime scene.
The crime scene is gone.
Yeah, there's no police keeping Joe Q public back. It's
no, the yellow tape doesn't exist yet. Don't even know if it exists yet. There must be some kind of tape. No, it's blue here.
That just says police, doesn't it? I don't think
something like that. Yeah. But anyway, that wasn't the thing at the time. Remember, there was no forensic police anyway at the time. So what's the point of preserving the crime scene, because you're not going to do anything with it anyway? I mean, once the bodies are out, the bodies are out.
I mean, this is even pre-fingerprinting. So.
Long before fingerprinting, nearly 50 years. So it's just, they probably don't think there's any point doing it.
Yeah, forensics is just at a minimum, is it? It's just basically, okay, maybe you might identify what somebody's been poisoned with if it's an obvious poison.
I think the first case that was solved using chemistry for poisoning is later than that. It's very early 20th century. So I don't think they would have done any forensics at all.
No. Certainly no crime scene information would ever be used.
Everything would have relied on witnesses at the time, or like a piece of paper or something, but nothing.
Witnesses and confessions, presumably.
At the time, pretty much. What's special about this case is it is the first case where the dead bodies are photographed. There will be some photos on the website.
It's not really surprising that France was the first crime scene kind of photos, because I mean, photography is so steeped in the culture. It's so, I mean, it's kind of
amazing that it's 1869.
Yes.
And the first photo was taken not even 20 years earlier.
Yes,
first ever.
we have discussed that in a
So-
previous episode. The long exposure of the guy cleaning the shoe cleaning guy in the street.
Mhm.
We have discussed that, but yeah, I mean it's come.
So
But-
it's amazing that suddenly somebody in the police decided, oh, we'll take
Yeah.
photos of the bodies.
That might be useful. Yeah,
That might be useful. It's also the first time that the photos are circulated in newspapers. Most newspapers couldn't print photos, of course, because photos were very, very new.
yeah.
So what they did was they had an artist draw from the photos and
okay.
print those drawings.
So
because
like
they
an
could print
artist
drawings.
rendering rather.
Artist
than,
rendering of a photo of
Yeah.
a body, yeah. But that way, it means that everybody could see the murders,
Mm.
and the news of the murder circulated in the whole country.
Well, it
So
must have done.
It
I
was
mean,
suddenly a
it's-
national thing.
Yeah, well,
even
it's
though
so
it was
it
in a
is so
small town.
horrific and so
Yeah.
unusual to find. You
Yeah.
know.
But there were quite a lot of gruesome murders at the time. It's just that they didn't go very far. They didn't go further than
Yeah.
local press.
Mm.
Whereas because they had photos, everybody wanted the photos. Everybody wanted to print these
Something
drawings
new,
of the
yes,
photos. So
yeah.
suddenly all newspapers in
Yeah.
the country have it. So everybody knew about that
Mm.
case.
Mm-hmm.
The inquiry starts and is entrusted to Antoine Claude. We talked about him, commissioner, in episode 44. He's located in Paris. The victims are quickly identified because the kids have labels in their clothes that have the name of a tailor in Roubaix. Roubaix is at the Belgian border, in
Right.
the north of France, next to Lille.
Mm-hmm.
Lille Roubaix-Tourcoing is a conurbation. Lille Roubaix-Tourcoing is one big city that has millions of people in it. It's a bit like LA. So they go and investigate, and they find the tailor, and he remembers the family, so they're quickly identified.
So we must. I'm going on the assumption that these are kind of like reasonably middle class people, and if they can afford to have their kids' clothes made at a quite a fancy
I would think
tailor.
so. Yeah. They are well off.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, the police thinks that the father and the eldest son are the murderers because they have been missing and nobody has seen them for a good while. So they thought, oh, it's them. Obviously, they're hiding.
Yeah, well, it tends to be, doesn't it?
Tends to be the family. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. However, they reorient their searches because of the description of the stranger in the cab.
Mhm.
It doesn't match at all the father or his son.
Right.
So there's another person they want to find, and they have no idea who he is. They find letters, and using the content of those letters, they start piecing together what really happened.
Letters were really kind of like a heavy indicator of how things were going. Certainly, you know, it kind of like almost fills in so much more of the gaps than emails do today.
Yeah, and also you could get letters delivered even faster than today if you paid the price. So
Yeah.
you could get delivered, like we posted them in the morning and they were delivered in the afternoon. Also, the post office had 2 or 3 deliveries a day.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, you're talking.
So it was email of the time.
No phone,
No.
no phones. So I mean, really, yeah, you can understand why they suddenly had a lot of letters kicking about.
Yes. So they discover the story. At the end of August 1869, Jean Quinck, let's call him King, it's easier for English-speaking people. It's a northern spelling, so it's K-I-N-C-K.
Is that not Breton?
No, it's northern, so it's like a mix of Wallon and Flemish.
Okay, yeah,
It's northern spelling.
right.
Everybody here would recognize that as coming from somewhere near Belgium.
Yeah, and there'd also all the people from Brittany would be giving me the evils for suggesting that
Yeah.
Brittany was in the
In
north.
Brittany, it would be something like K-I-N apostrophe C-H or something. It might have the same pronunciation, but very different
Yes.
spelling. So anyway, he announces to his family that he's going to Alsace for business. And it will take the opportunity of being there to visit his sister, who lives in Coupviller. He says that he notified her by mail in advance.
Right.
It's not uncommon for Jean Quinck to travel all over the place for business. Hortense, his wife, and his 6 kids, servants on the way. She's
Oh,
six
no,
months
hang on a minute.
pregnant.
She was pregnant when she died?
Yes.
Oh,
So
no.
they find 6 bodies, but in fact it's 7 bodies. They don't know that at the time.
Oh, no.
So they're used to it. They're used to have Jean go all over the place for his business.
He certainly must have been home for large chunks of time to produce that many kids.
On the 29th of August 1869, Jean arrives at the train station in Bolviller. in Alsace.
Uh-huh.
There he's met by Jean-Baptiste Tropman, a young guy he already knows. They met in Roubaix, where the King family lives. Jean-Baptiste was helping his father install industrial machines for the King family.
All right, okay.
The business was based in Paris,
Mm-hmm.
the Tropman business. But these machines were installed all over the place. Jean-Baptiste's father, Joseph, was a brilliant engineer who owned a number of patents on optimization of weaving machines. Joseph isn't good for his own business and tends to drink way too much. So he spends all his money essentially in drinks and whatever else, parties, I guess.
So, whilst being absolutely fantastic...
He's a very good engineer, a very bad business guy.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is, Jean-Baptiste wants to be rich.
Okay.
He wants money.
So he's just greedy.
He's very greedy. And he knows his father's business is not going to last, given how Joseph is spending the money.
Uh-huh.
So at the moment, he's working as a mechanic. So he helps installing and running the machines for his father.
Right.
And he's hoping to learn the ropes that way and then make money.
He's not doing it for the love of
he's not loving
engineering.
No. No. After having lived for a little bit more than a year in Paris, near the Pantin area in 1868, to install one of his father's machines,
mm-hmm.
he did the same in Roubaix, in Jean King's factory.
Right.
That's how they met.
Right.
Jean King is exceptional, according to newspapers. He's risen through the ranks of a factory. He started on the floor as a mechanic, and then he became factory manager, and now he owns his own factory, which he wants to expand.
So he's the opposite. He's, good at...
He's good at business, yes.
Yes, he's good at business, but also, he was an engineer, but he was good at business.
Yes.
And, mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's now running a well-oiled textile factory.
Well, he's obviously well off if he can afford to have his kids have, handmade bespoke clothes.
Yes, but hence the need for better, faster machines.
Mm.
So that's why he bought machines from Joseph.
Right.
Back in the train station, Jean-Baptiste picks up Jean and takes him away. He managed to convince him to visit an area under secret pretenses. We don't know what the reason he gave him. We don't have a trace of it. So it's unknown how he manages to convince Jean to come to some unknown area when that wasn't his plan originally.
Right.
But he manages to convince him.
Uh-huh.
Once on the road, Jean-Baptiste gives Jean a drink because he must be thirsty. He's been traveling since Roubaix.
Mm-hmm.
And Roubaix, Alsace at the time, would have taken a while. One of Jean-Baptiste's interests is chemistry. As a teenager, he spent most of his free time playing with chemicals and chemistry sets. The drinks is laced with prussic acid. We call it now hydrogen cyanide.
Wow.
So we know what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Hydrogen cyanide inhibits oxygen absorption by the cells, so you suffocate.
That sounds like a horrible way to die.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun. So needless to say, Jean doesn't last long. He dies very quickly. And Jean-Baptiste buries the body in a shallow grave, somewhere isolated.
So that's solved one of the mysteries. Papa is in fact out east.
Yes.
He's not the murderer.
He's not the murderer.
Right.
No. But of course the priest doesn't know all that.
No, of course.
They're learning that reading the letters.
Mm.
Jean-Baptiste's motivation was to get his hand on 5,500 francs that Jean was supposedly carrying with him for a business deal. However, Jean isn't stupid. He doesn't travel with that much cash because that would have been a fortune at the time.
Yeah, I don't think most people travel around with 5,000 euros anyway.
Yeah, but at the time it would have been the equivalent of, I don't know, maybe 100,000. It would have been a huge
amount of money. Yeah, definitely.
All he has in his pocket is 212 francs.
That's still quite a lot of money.
It's still a lot of money, but it's a tiny fraction of
what
Jean-Baptiste was expecting.
So yeah, he had large franc signs in his eyes,
exactly.
and obviously sadly disappointed at the spoils.
Yeah, so it's a bummer. Jean-Baptiste has to change his plan, obviously. So he writes to Hortense, Jean's wife,
right,
pretending doing so under the dictation of Jean, who somehow managed to injure his hand.
Okay.
So he can't write. So Jean-Baptiste does the writing, but Jean is doing the talking, allegedly.
Yeah.
He asks her to cash the checks that Jean was carrying for 5,500 francs.
Okay. So he sends the checks that Jean had.
Yeah, he's
back
going to send the checks back to Hortense so that she can cash the money and send him the cash by post.
Okay. That's crazy.
To Cupviller, where they are at the moment. It's not very subtle.
No.
But Hortense is normally kept out of dealings by her husband, so she doesn't really know how things work. So she's not sure, but she's not entirely surprised of the request. So she does what she's asked to do. She cashes the checks and sends the money by post.
At that time, you probably wouldn't question your husband too much.
No, probably not. However, the plan doesn't work once again.
Good.
Because Jean-Baptiste is judged to be too young looking to be Jean King by the post office guy.
Yeah, okay.
Even though he has Jean's ID, because of course he has his papers, he killed him.
Yes. And of course, no photograph on the ID papers.
Of course. Yeah. So all he has is a piece of paper with a name, and he says, "That's me. Give me my money."
And they go, "Aye, right."
Exactly. Because you look like you're 12. You're not that dude who's 45.
He doesn't have a fabulous beard like you do, so you can't pass off for being older.
Yes. So that doesn't work. When he's confronted about his age, he says that he is Jean King, but he's in fact Jean King's junior.
So he invents a child.
So he invents a child that Jean King doesn't have. And he says, "Oh, I have the same name. That's why I have those ID papers. But I want the money that was sent to my dad."
Yeah. I mean, it's never a good idea to lie in the first place. But, trying to create a lie that can be easily checked and verified is a quick way to fail.
Yes. It's not the most efficient way of robbing people when you do something that they can check in 2 seconds.
Yes.
So the post office guy asks him for an unofficial power of attorney, so that he can give him the money that is for his dad, allegedly. So Jean-Baptiste goes away and comes back with papers giving him permission to collect the money signed by Jean King.
Right.
The post office manager still isn't happy, and he knows that Jean has family in the area. So he calls a relative to ask them to come to the post office. I guess sends them a letter to make sure that the person who's in front of him is in fact Jean King's son, and therefore he can give him the money as the papers say.
Yeah, see my earlier comment of, inventing a son was never going to be a good idea.
So the relative insists that there is no such thing as a Jean King Jr. For a start. And that guy there looks like nobody she's ever seen. So that doesn't work, because Jean-Baptiste leaves again, not getting the money.
I mean, at this point, are they not wondering where he is, where Clink is?
I don't know exactly how much he said to his family. It could be that they're used to have him go away for weeks. Yeah,
but it's a case of this guy keeps coming back and trying to get this guy's money. And is no one wondering the guy whose money you're trying to steal? Where's he?
Yeah. Well, the guy at the post office is very suspicious, but maybe not enough to call the police. I don't know. So anyway, once again, Jean-Baptiste has to improvise. So he thinks of using Gustave, Jean's real son, who's 16, to get access to the money.
Yeah, why didn't you just pretend to be Gustave? What an idiot.
He didn't have any papers with the name Gustave on it.
Oh, but surely at that time it would have been easy to forge something.
So Jean-Baptiste moves to Paris, where he pretends Jean is now living, and once again writes to his family pretending to write under the dictation of Jean. He asks Gustave to go to Cupviller to collect the money stuck there in the post office after Hortense sent it. To convince the family to participate, he mentions that he hit it big. He had a deal for about 500,000 francs, and he needs that tiny amount of money to get the deal going. So that sounds like a Nigerian scam.
Yes. No, a Nigerian princess promised me 20 million if only I send this 1,000 euros.
Exactly, yeah. He also introduces himself by saying that the deal is with him, he says in the letter, allegedly from Jean, that Jean-Baptiste is the guy who is running the deal, that he's entirely trustworthy, so the family should trust him, and he's a good business partner.
This is starting to sound like a very modern murder at this point.
Uh-huh.
This whole, assuming someone's identity and...
Yes, but now it makes it a lot easier for himself, because now he is part of the story officially.
He's now trying to give himself validity.
Yes, he's introduced by Jean, so now he can deal as himself without having to pretend to be Jean. So that's what he's doing. So he's hoping that way, having legitimate access to the business deal, he will be able to get his hands on Jean's business and assets.
Yeah.
On the 5th of September, Gustave arrives in Guebwiller. However, in the rush to go, he forgot to get a properly certified power of attorney. So the post office again refuses to give him the money.
I have to say, gentle listener, at this point, our bank is with La Poste, and we have so much trouble getting our money out of the bank. It's just making me laugh, because they've clearly been like that. In this instance, being very cautious about giving out money. They're still like that.
Yes. So Gustave gets impatient and apparently goes into a rage and declares that he's leaving to Paris to meet his father.
Right.
So he does. Jean-Baptiste is there to receive him at the station. He's furious. Jean-Baptiste.
Yep.
He convinces Gustave to write to his family and request that the whole family come to Paris with all the papers. That's what it says in the letter.
This is starting to get out of control. The more people that you try to herd or get involved in a scheme, the more likely it is to go wrong.
It's becoming more complicated, but he's running out of option all the time. It's like he tries a thing and it fails, and tries the next one and it fails, and tries the next one and it fails. He's still trying, but he's really struggling. At that point, Gustave is no longer useful to Jean-Baptiste.
Oh no.
So under the pretense of taking him to his father, he takes him to an isolated place, kills him, and buries him. Body number 2.
Okay, so here we go. It's the reason why they were missing wasn't because of the fact they murdered their families, because they were already dead.
Yeah. His body will be found on the 26th of September in the same field as the rest of the family, just different corner.
Yeah.
So the difficulty the police has is to find irrefutable proof that Jean-Baptiste is doing those things.
Yeah.
They trace his movements and arrest him in Le Havre.
Oh, so he was trying to do a runner, clearly.
They found him because of the description that was given by the cab driver, remember?
Uh-huh.
So they know who they're looking for, and they somehow found him, but he's gone by the time they kind of follow his trail.
Mm-hmm.
But they locate him in Le Havre. He's planning to take a boat to go to the US.
Yeah.
He's originally arrested by a gendarme because his behavior had been reported to the police by hotel owners in the area.
Right.
Apparently, he was trying to obtain fake ID papers. And he was talking strangely, looking particularly shifty, according to some hotel owners.
Okay, so he was being squirrely.
Yeah. So they report him to the police and they come and arrest him. The gendarme that arrested him thought that he was hiding something. And in fact, he was hiding his hand because he had been injured.
Oh, just future murderers out there, always take maybe chainmail gloves that butchers wear. You're always going to injure yourself if you're stabbing people more than one or two times. I mean, it's a savage act.
Yes. So if he hadn't been hiding his hand, he could have maybe got away with it. But because he was shifty and hiding that hand, then he was arrested by the gendarme because the gendarme connected the dots.
Yeah.
And he remembered the equivalent of a bolo, I guess, at the time for a guy matching his description for the Pantin Massacre, which of course he would know about because it was in the press everywhere. So when he's arrested, he manages to free himself and run away. He threw himself into the port in Le Havre.
Okay, that was drastic.
Yeah. Thinking he wanted to escape, someone, not the gendarme, but someone, jumps after him, but they have to fight to get him out of the water because he didn't want to escape. He wanted to drown.
Right, okay.
So he's forcefully taken out of the water.
Okay.
When he's searched, the police discovers many property and credit papers in the name of Jean Quinque. Some money, which were mostly 5 francs silver coins, which were not that common at the time. As it's hard to explain all those things in his possession, at first Jean-Baptiste admits that he was involved in the Quinque murders. He's just too nervous, and it's just... He obviously decided there's absolutely no way I can lie. They will know I'm lying. So let's go with it.
Okay.
That's what he decided to do. So yes, I was involved in the murders, but I took part under duress. That's what he said.
Well, somebody had a gun to his head.
Yes. The real murderers are Jean Quinque and his son Gustave.
Oh, right. That's pretty low.
Yes. He gives a whole unlikely scenario where he was barely more than a driver for them, so that they could move the family around and get them to an isolated spot and killed. So he didn't do any killing. It was just on the periphery of the murders. His explanations get even weaker when they discover letters that Jean had exchanged with his family that he wasn't aware of. So Jean has sent letters to his family explaining what he was doing, where he was going, that Jean-Baptiste had no clue existed.
Okay.
And it contradicts, of course, everything he says. So he's in trouble at that point. His explanations become even weaker when on the 26th of September, the butcher boy discovers in Pantin the body of Gustave, as we mentioned.
Yeah.
As Jean-Baptiste is accusing him of being the accomplice of his father in the murders, that doesn't work because they can tell that guy has been dead way too long to have been the murderer.
Yeah.
Because remember, we're only days after the bodies were found. And Gustave's body is older than that. So that doesn't work.
No.
So he has an idea. He says that Jean killed Gustave after he killed his family.
Right, okay.
So that's why he's buried there as well. Of course, now it wouldn't work because you could tell that they haven't been killed at the same time. But anyway, at the time, it might have worked.
Yeah.
In the meantime, through witnesses and letters, the police pieces together what really happened in Alsace. They start searching for Jean's body. On the 12th of November, Antoine Claude, the commissioner, announces to Jean-Baptiste that Jean's body had been found.
Right.
And as a result, Jean-Baptiste confesses to the murders. There's no point lying at that point.
No.
Because they found all 8 bodies. Well, 8.5, I guess. It's not clear whether he actually believed that the body had been found and therefore there was no point lying, or if he confessed to somehow get a lighter sentence, or if he was still playing with the police. The police is not even sure at the time why he confessed to them. But what's important is he confessed.
I mean, he clearly thought or could feel the noose tightening around his neck, or of course we're in France, so he could feel the guillotine hovering above his head like a sword of Damocles in La Havre. And he obviously, jumping into the drink, he obviously thought, the gig's up.
So the police is not sure why he confessed, but they don't care because once he confesses, then he can go to trial.
Yes.
They don't care. In fact, the body, Jean's body, isn't found before the 24th of November, so quite a lot later.
Right.
They found the body in a forest near Vataviller, I guess. The trial starts on the 28th of December 1869 in Paris. There are crowds everywhere trying to get into the courthouse, and apparently people fight for the tickets because they have to put a ticket system in place because there's so many people trying to get in.
Well, I mean, the press have whipped everyone up into such a frenzy.
Oh, yeah, totally. Jean-Baptiste is defended by a very famous lawyer at the time, Charles Lachaud.
So basically, it's probably the equivalent of the OJ case, except there was no televised.
It would be the equivalent in terms of frenzy around the whole story and all that. But unfortunately, the lawyer really has nothing to go on because the bodies have been found, the letters incriminate him, and he confessed. So really, poor lawyer. It might be good. He's not going to save his client. On the 30th of December, Jean-Baptiste is sentenced to death. So surprisingly. He appeals, but his appeal is rejected. Then he appeals the appeal, and it's rejected again. So that's the end of the road at that point. On the 19th of January, he's brought to the guillotine. Apparently, according to witnesses, he looks 30 years older. So prison wasn't good to him, even though he wasn't there very long.
It's annoying they don't send him out to Guyana for 10 years and then bring him back, then cut his head off.
Yes. Once again, the crowds want to watch the execution,
Mm-hmm.
but it takes place inside the prison. So it's public, but inside the prison, so places are limited.
Right.
So very few can actually see anything. Jean-Baptiste is calm until he gets to the guillotine, and then suddenly he tries to escape. He manages to undo his ropes and fight with the executioner's aides. The executioner even has to maintain his head in the guillotine's hole.
So he's not going out with dignity, is he?
No. Legend has it that Jean-Baptiste manages to bite the executioner's hand and nearly severing the index finger.
Oh.
And that made the executioner shout, "Bloody frog, it's been hard."
Well, hang on a minute, isn't he a frog as well?
In what way?
I take it he wasn't meaning, well, no, I mean, he wasn't meaning, frog is a very derogatory term for a French person.
Yeah, for a Brit, yeah, but not for a French person.
Yeah,
No, it was probably some kind of random swearing at the time. Like
no, okay.
Sugar,
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
So yeah, it's been hard. So that's the end of Jean-Baptiste.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he was convicted as the sole murderer, Antoine Claude, the commissioner, is certain that he had accomplices. For him, it is strictly impossible for a lone man to control and kill 6 people, some of them teenage boys.
He's got a point.
Yes. You don't, a 16-year-old is not going to let you kill him after he's seen you kill his brothers and mum. So he says there's absolutely no way that one guy could have done that.
Mm-hmm.
The kids would have run away, and he couldn't have caught all of them because they would have run in different directions or they would have fought back. It is, according to him, it's strictly impossible that he did it on his own. But there's no witnesses. Nobody was alerted by nose. The cab driver doesn't mention anybody else. So there's no proof that there was a conspiracy to kill that family.
I think my doubt about that would be the guy's a scumbag. He would have thrown other people under the bus,
Yeah.
in the blink of an eye. I don't think so.
Yeah. But how did he manage to kill a
I
whole
don't
family
know.
on his own? That's what
I
they're
really
saying.
don't
It doesn't
know.
make any sense.
Whether he isolated them and they weren't aware of what was going on in the house, and they were all murdered in the field, weren't they?
They were in the field.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
So he's certain that he had the help of 2 watchers and 2 helpers.
That's very specific.
Yes, it doesn't rely on proof. It relies on experience and gut feeling, essentially.
All right.
He publishes all that in memoirs after he retires.
Okay.
So that's how we know about his feeling about it, because that's not official police reports. But because it's just feelings and experience, it wouldn't stand in court. So that doesn't go further than that. He thinks that the whole affair is linked to 2 things. Money counterfeiting operation in Alsace. Apparently these were fairly common at the time.
Right.
And the invasion of France by Germany a few years later in 1871.
Ah, yes,
So he thinks all those things are related. He thinks that the story is that Jean King, when he went to Alsace, stumbled across a counterfeiting operation linked to the financing of the invasion. So the Germans were trying to finance the war by counterfeiting money in France. That's what he thinks.
Okay.
To keep Jean quiet, because he was an unexpected witness, they would have killed him. Jean-Baptiste at that point would have only been a hitman, essentially, no more than that. Then he would have killed the rest. They would have killed the rest of the family to keep everything quiet, and so that nobody would hear about the affair. It just got out because Jean-Baptiste was an idiot. None of that can be proven. It relies on nothing, no hard evidence. There is one newspaper I saw who says that the way the kids were murdered, and that's according to an alleged interview with a cab driver by journalists. So it wasn't part of the trial. It wasn't part of the police investigation. Apparently, he got the whole family there and got them out 2 by 2 to take them to the field. So he took the mom out with one of the kids, killed the mom, hence that he had time to stab her 30 times.
Right.
Killed one of the young kids, I think the daughter first. So she was the younger one. She was 2 or 3. Then went back to the cab, took 2 more, took them to the same spot, killed them, buried them, then came back and did that several times until he had the whole family killed. But of course, it's just what the journalist says in the newspaper. There's no corroboration, there's no proof or anything, and the police never mentioned that.
The whole thing with the stuff out east and the trying to build money for a war. That all feels very QAnon. It just sounds crazy.
I don't know. According to the police report, it wasn't uncommon. Alsace was apparently known. Alsace and especially the German border were very known for counterfeiting operations.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it was
Alsace,
apparently a very common name.
Alsace and Lorraine have, swapped nationality several times.
A number of times, yeah. At the time they were French, but then they were German from 1871 to 1915, 16.
Yeah, after the First World War, yeah.
Yes, and then they became French again.
Well, I think the moral of the story is people always be careful what you do in front of an eagle-eyed Uber driver.